So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of ELTAI, I welcome you all for this webinar titled Shaping Indian Diaspora, Literary and Cultural Representations of the Desi. So before we move on to the webinar, I request you to watch a promo clip of ELTAI. Here it is. Thank you for watching the promo clip of ELTAI. So we have a moderator for this session. She is Miss Vishnu Vandana, Secretary ELTAI Vijayawada chapter. She is also an Associate Professor of English, Vijaya Institute of Pharmaceutical Sciences for Women. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Praveen. A very good evening to you all, the attendees of this webinar. I thank ELTAI Central Committee for giving our Vijayawada ELTAI chapter this opportunity. Thank you very much. And today, along with me, we have another moderator for the session, Dr. Dasam Sridevi. She is currently working as Assistant Professor of English and Soft Skills Trainer at Industry Relations and Placements at VR Siddhartha Engineering College, Vijayawada. She has a rich teaching experience of 25 years, and she is a certified IELTS trainer. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for being with us today. And today, the session by Dr. N. Usha is titled Shaping Indian Diaspora, Literary and Cultural Representation of this Desi. Before we move into the session, let me introduce to you Dr. Usha's profile. Dr. Usha, she is working as the professor in the Department of English at Krishna University, Machilipatnam, Andhra Pradesh. She has been the former principal at University Campus College, Krishna University, and also rendered her services as registrar, Krishna University. In this webinar, today, she is going to discuss the diasporic practices of the Indian communities as represented in literature, cultural studies, and film studies. She also highlights the new tendencies in the configuration of the global Indian diaspora. Thank you, madam. Thank you for accepting our invitation and being the resource person of the day's session. Over to you, Dr. Usha.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. On behalf of the Vijayawada chapter, I'm very happy that we are organizing this first program, and I wholeheartedly thank ELTAI for giving us this opportunity, and I'm sure we'll do many more good presentations and webinars and many other academic programs in future. Thank you. I hope I'm audible to all of you.
Yes, ma'am, you are audible. Go on, ma'am.
I'll start my presentation. So is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, your presentation is on the screen and audience can see. You go on, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So today I'm going to discuss about shaping Indian diaspora, literary and cultural representation of the Desi. My presentation would be on conceptualizing Indian diaspora, importance of Indian diaspora, literature of Indian diaspora, cultural representation of the Indian Desi in Indian cinema, and challenges and issues. Claire Menozzi, the Population Affairs Officer in UN, said that the Indian diaspora is one of the most vibrant and dynamic. It's the largest in the world, with 18 million people from the country living outside their homeland in 2020. So if you look at diaspora and understand what diaspora is all about, we have certain features as spoken by Robert Cohen, who says that diaspora is dispersal from an original homeland, often traumatically to two or more foreign regions. Alternatively, diaspora also can be the expansion of a homeland in search of work, in pursuit of trade or other colonial ambitions. It's a collective memory and myth about the homeland, including its location, history, and achievements. It's the idealization of the ancestral home, and also a collective commitment towards its maintenance, restoration, safety, prosperity, and even its creation, as we have seen in Palestine. The development of a return movement which gains collective approbation, then a strong ethnic group consciousness sustained over a long time and based on a sense of distinctiveness, a troubled relation with host societies, suggesting a lack of acceptance at the least, or the possibility that another calamity may befall the group, a sense of empathy and solidarity with co-ethnic members of the other countries of settlement, and also a possibility of a distinctive yet creative and enriching life in the host countries with a tolerance of pluralism. Based on all these features, Robin Cohen has identified 5 different types of diaspora. That is, victim diasporas, labor diasporas, trade diasporas, imperial diasporas, and cultural diasporas. Now, when we look at Indian diaspora, it's a very big term, an umbrella term to describe the people who have migrated from the Republic of India and their descendants. So 18 million Indian diaspora comprise of NRIs, that is non-resident Indians, and PIOs, persons of Indian origin, who have taken the citizenship of some other country. Now here, there are some complexities. For example, Professor Amartya Sen is an NRI. Though he has been abroad from 1953 onwards, he has not taken citizenship in any country. And our Indian actor Akshay Kumar is a PIO. He is a Canadian citizen living in India. So there are some complexities in this, and it just depends on the individual member, whether he wants to continue as an NRI or whether he wants to give up Indian citizenship and take citizenship of some other country. Of course, the NRIs have been asking for dual citizenship, and it's still in the process. So 500,000 PIOs and 500,000 NRIs are being added every year. So this is a graphic representation of home away from home. The global presence of Indian diaspora, mostly in US, in South Africa, in Arab Emirates, and also in Malaysian Peninsula. And if you see, these are some of the celebrity Indian diasporic entrepreneurs who have made India proud in the world. And not just them, we have Kalpana Chawla and some of the NASA scientists and professors, Meera Nair, the film director. They have really brought in an identity for Indian diaspora. Now we have 4 patterns of Indian emigration. If we look into the history of diaspora, that is pre-colonial migration, colonial migration, post-colonial migration, and recent migration to West Asia. We should understand the fact that even before the British came to India, India had a wonderful culture, and India had very good trade links with West Asia and other parts of the world, even from 2000 BC. Gujarati traders took Indian ivory, spices, pepper, apes, peacocks for decoration of the palaces in Persian Gulf and Mesopotamia. Next, after 50 years after Buddha's death, that is in 1483 BC, his disciples went to the neighboring countries to spread Buddhism and settled there. King Ashoka and King Tanishka embraced Buddhism and sent monks to Central and East Asia, Gandhara. Gandhara is Kandahar, that is the present-day Afghanistan, and Greece to spread the teachings of Buddha. Indian settlements were in existence even in Northeast Africa at the time of Alexander the Great. And another famous book, that is Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, which was the 1st century Greek guide to sailors, mentions Indian sailors and Indian ships along the East African coast and India's maritime trade relations with Rome, Malay Islands, and China. In fact, I have to tell you that our university, Krishna University, is located in Machilipatnam, and Machilipatnam was one of the ancient port cities where regularly, people from other countries such as Rome, China, and Eastern Asia used to come to Machilipatnam, buy muslin, and our traders, Indian traders, also used to go from Machilipatnam to other countries in order to sell their goods. So in this process, migration settlement was just a normal activity for Indians even during the pre-modern or the pre-colonial times. And Indians, the Hindu kings of the Indian subcontinent, occupied Burma, Ceylon, Cambodia Desa, that is Kampuchea, Angkor, Laos, Malaykos, Bali, Java, and Sumatra, by 1st century AD. Now coming to the colonial migration, Indian merchants sailed to Russia and also to other places during the colonial times. And Indian indenture system started when the slavery ended in 1833, and because of that, British over 1 million workers from India were taken by the British in ships to different British colonies from 1834 to 1917. Of course, the system of indenture ended in 1917, but the migration didn't stop. So during the period of Raj, Indian seamen, politicians, barristers, doctors, social celebrities, and even domestic servants went to UK and other European countries and settled there. Of course, we all know about the famous Indian students like Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and many other Indian politicians, celebrities who went to UK and studied there. Indians migrated even to the American continent in 1800s and later to Canada in 1900s. Now coming to women and migration, I would like to take one aspect of the oral archives and letters which really were preserved in Caribbean and the Mauritius. And very recently, in 2013, Gautra Bahadur, an American Indian journalist, explored the 1903 journey of her great-grandmother Sujaria from Maji district in Bihar to Guyana in the book Huli She published this book in 2013, which, like Alex Haley's Roots, tells us about Sujaria's story, because at that point of time, she was single, she was pregnant, and she was a Brahmin lady who was crossing the seas, when crossing the seas was a taboo in those days. So by 1910, if you see, 23% of the indentured Indians in Mauritius were women. They were sifting sugar, stirring the juice, and maintaining the mills. And how did women go? They didn't have VIP suitcases. They just carried 2 saris, a lota, and a copy of Tulsidas Ramayana. This is a book which was published by Gautra Bahadur in 2013. Now coming to the post-colonial migration to the industrially developed countries. Here we see 3 different patterns. For example, the first one is Anglo-Indians, the immigration of Anglo-Indians to Australia and England after independence. Then the immigration of Indian professionals to the industrially advanced countries like the US, UK, Australia, and Canada, and also the immigration of skilled and unskilled laborers to West Asia. Now here, talking about the Anglo-Indians, very recently, this book, Britain's Anglo-Indians, was published by Professor Rochelle Almeida of New York University, where she talks about the evolution of Anglo-Indians. Now, after independence, some 50,000 Anglo-Indians migrated to Britain in the belief that Britain was their true home. But however, they quickly discovered that their rosy expectations of life in the mother country amounted to nothing more than wishful thinking, because they faced a hostile reception. They were not accepted, and that alarmed and depressed them, encountering racial prejudice in employment, in accommodation, in society, and finally they had to come back home. Professor Amartya Sen, the Indian professor in Harvard, says modern Indians see themselves as global citizens, and they aspire to make the use of the best of both the worlds. When they retain a sense of affiliation and companionship with India and Indians, they find no contradiction in being loyal citizens of the country they have immigrated. Now, this is another representation of how or where the Indians go. So, most of the Indians have gone to UAE, which is 3.5 million, then US, then Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Oman, UK, Qatar. Of course, not just these. Indians have had their presence felt in almost 140 countries of the world. Now, looking at the Indian diaspora today, so our diaspora is distributed across the major countries of this destination, like UAE, US, and Saudi Arabia, and also Australia, Canada, Kuwait, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, and UK. Now, between 2000 and 2020, the size of the migrant population also increased in countries like Syria, Venezuela, China, and Philippines. And India is one of the top recipients of remittances worldwide and received 83 billion US dollars from its diaspora in 2019. Another famous Indian diasporic professor, Professor Geeta Gopinath, who recently became the first female chief economist of IMF, International Monetary Fund. She said recently that India would be the fastest growing emerging economy in the world with GDP growth of 12.5% in 21-22. Now, if you look at the politics, diaspora and politics, these are some of the heads of the government, the famous Indian diasporic leaders in different countries of the world. Muhammad Irfan Ali, President of Guyana; Antonio Costa, Prime Minister of Portugal; Pravind Jugnauth, Prime Minister of Mauritius; Prithviraj Singh Rupan, President of Mauritius; Chandrika Persad Santokhi, President of Suriname. They are or they were Indians, the famous Indian diaspora. And not just these people, we also have some of the deputy heads of the government, that is the vice presidents and the ministers. Very recently, we all have witnessed that Kamala Harris has become the vice president of United States of America. Bharat Jagdev, vice president of Guyana; Leo Varadkar, the Minister for Enterprise, Trade and Employment in Ireland. Then, of course, these are some of the ministers in different countries like Suriname, Fiji, Trinidad, Canada, Guyana, Singapore, Fiji, and Mauritius. Vivian Balakrishnan is a Minister of Foreign Affairs in Singapore who visited India recently. So they are the agents of change across the world, and they are the torch bearers of India. So if you look at some of them, I'm sure you identify them when you read the newspaper every day. For example, Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, United Kingdom, is the son-in-law of our Infosys chairman, Mr. Narayan Murthy and Mrs. Sudha Murthy. So, Indian diaspora is spread across the world, and they are carrying the identity of India everywhere. That is the reason why India celebrates Pravasa Bharati Divas on 9th January to commemorate the return of the most iconic Pravasi, that is Mahatma Gandhi, from Africa on 9th January 1915. I'm sure you're aware that Mahatma Gandhi studied in UK and later went to work in South Africa before returning to India. $69 billion remittances make an invaluable contribution to India's growth and development, socio-economic development, poverty reduction in rural areas, and NRIs are more prone to donating to domestic charities because of the strong cultural and emotional feelings they nurse for India. Indian diaspora also acts as agents of change, facilitating investment, accelerating industrial development, and boosting international trade and tourism. This we have seen very recently in the presence of Mr. Sundar Pichai of Google and Mr. Satya Nadella of Microsoft, who have established a strong presence of their companies in India. Long-term advantage in nurturing these ties with an active Indian diaspora is the growth of IT in India. And an important advantage is also the diaspora diplomacy as they act as bridge builders between their home and adapted countries. And the migration of skilled professionals to foreign countries and their eventual success enhances our nation's image. So this is a graphic representation of the remittances received by India. India is on the top, followed by China, Philippines, Mexico, Nigeria, Egypt, Pakistan, Vietnam, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. If you see, even during the COVID situation, just from April to August period, India received 6.4 millions in remittances. Now coming to the literary representation of Indian diaspora. These are the writers of the Indian diaspora. I'm sure you can recognize most of them. Jhumpa Lahiri is a Pulitzer Prize winner, and she is an Indian American who has written a number of short stories and novels. Now, what are the major themes of Indian diaspora? They are homeland, dislocation, displacement, partition, feeling of loss, alienation, existential rootlessness, nostalgia for the home country, quest for identity, immigrant lives, hybridity, transnationalism, alternative homes, cultural identity, and ethnicity. I have listed some of the writers of the Indian diaspora living in different countries of the world and writing about India and also their host societies. These are some of the important markers of Indian literature, Indian diasporic literature. Anurag Mathur's The Inscrutable Americans was a bestseller and also a wonderful comic representation of his stay in America. Then Chitra Banerjee's Arranged Marriage was a famous anthology of short stories. And Jhumpa Lahiri's The Namesake was a bestseller and also made into a movie called, a movie by one of the top directors. Now coming to diasporic literature, it has the task of cultural diversity and cultural difference. To rethink our perspective on the identity of culture. When we talk of cultural diversity and cultural difference, the diasporic writers have an advantage compared to the Indian writers because they are able to see different cultures, live in different cultures, and talk of the real cultural diversity, between their home and the host society. So we have these diasporic writers talking about the histories, the displaced diasporic experiences, and also the hybrid identity. And of late, we also talk of the transnationalism or transnational culture, where we talk of, or we talk of, our culture, acceptance of the culture, and understanding of, the international identity. Now, in literature, we also have food literature, food as a marker of Indian culture, and a number of books on Indian cuisine has become popular and they have become bestsellers. I'm sure you would have seen some of these books by Indian diasporic writers. Then, of course, Indian fashion designers, they also have made a mark for themselves, and they have also written books on fashion and represented the international stage with Indian designs. Then coming to the cultural representation of the Desi in Indian cinema. Now, when we talk of culture, okay, Indian diaspora has a very strong presence in cinema. The growing Indian diaspora in US and the rest of the world have made the overseas market a lucrative market for Bollywood. A few Indian movie personalities also have made an impact outside India, like Aishwarya Rai, Amitabh Bachchan, Deepa Mehta, Satyajit Ray, Ismail Merchant, Shyam Benegal, and some of the most famous names. And also we have crossover movies like Bend It Like Beckham, and also Indian English movies which have been made for this audience. Now, coming to the idea of a nation, the popular Indian cinema, maybe Bollywood or any of the regional cinema, illustrates the idea of the nation elaborated by Homi Bhabha in The Location of Culture. It is a narrative and a discursive strategy in which temporal and spatial representation holds a central place. He remarks that the difference of space returns as the sameness of time, turning territory into tradition, turning the people into one. So, Bollywood films focusing on the diaspora and heralding a set of conservative and essentialized Indian values seek to do away with the distance separating the expatriates from India and rebuild an ethnoscape, which brings together the permanence of tradition and the time of modernity to create an ethno-history that will give the viewers a sense of national community and pride embodied by the NRI. So these are some of the movies which talk of the Indian diaspora, like Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, Pardees, Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum, Swadesh, Delhi 6. So the influence of Bollywood on the Indian diaspora's identity construction, is one of the studies which took place, and the findings revealed that the Indian diaspora imagination of India is strongly informed by the Bollywood movies. For example, the first generation's nostalgia arises from watching Bollywood movies and as a result creating a motivation to travel to India. Now the second generation wants to travel to India to experience this new modern country which is portrayed in the recent movies, the contemporary Bollywood movies. Whereas third or fourth generation, the new generation who have never been to India before, the Bollywood movies enable them to romanticize their homeland and create an urge to visit India. So these Bollywood movies have immense importance in the Indian diaspora identity construction, promotion of diaspora tourism, and also they constitute a huge opportunity for economic development. If you take the Telugu movie, the Telugu movie Bahubali, which was made with a budget of 180 crores, it grossed 1400 crores and became the highest grossing film in India and the third highest grossing film worldwide. And if you have seen very recently, in the media, Bahubali was dubbed into many world languages, including Russian, Japanese, and all that. And Prabhas and Rana, they have fans worldwide, including Japanese. So, movie or cinema has, universal appeal. Now, coming to the government initiatives. There are two types of initiatives by the Indian government for the Indian diaspora. Firstly, they have consular services, consulates and high commissions in their respective countries for the protection and outreach activities of the Indian diaspora. And secondly, policy formulation. That is, policies are created to encourage the diaspora to contribute to India's growth through philanthropy, knowledge transfer, and investment in development projects. Then coming to the outreach activities of the Indian government. Indian government provides SPDC, that is Scholarship Program for Diaspora Children, Know India Program for Indian origin youth with their Indian roots and knowing about contemporary India. Then minimum referral wages. Under this, which is applicable to immigration check required countries, India has increased the minimum wages of Indian workers employed as industrial workers, domestic servants, cleaners, and laborers. And e-migrate system requires all foreign employers to register in the database so that Indian workers, are not exploited by these foreigners. Indian government also started Mother Portal to take timely and speedy action on grievances addressed by people living abroad. Then, the government of India has several incentives for NRIs for investing their funds in India. For example, they are exempted from taxes. NRI seats are reserved in, academic institutions like medical engineering and other professional colleges. Then the Representation of the People Bill 2017, provides the non-resident Indians to participate in the Indian electoral process. Then coming to the challenges faced by the Indians outside India, we have rising incident of hate speech and crimes against Indian diaspora by the locals due to racism, communism, because of the coming of nationalist and ultra-nationalist governments to power in many countries. Increasing anti-globalization, fear of losing jobs and educational opportunities to outsiders have resulted in stricter visa rules in many countries, including US, Australia, etc. Very recently, we have seen it during the Trump administration in USA. Then the sectarian crisis, increasing terrorist activities and war in the Middle East countries such as Yemen, Oman, Libya, Syria, leave our diaspora vulnerable to attacks. Very recently, we are witnessing the same even in Afghanistan, where the Indian diaspora have come back to India because of the crisis there. Adverse local laws to encourage more employment from locals, such as Nitakat laws of Saudi Arabia, which means one local to be hired in place of 10 migrants, have adversely affected the prospects of Indian working class in Saudi Arabia. Now, coming to the challenges within India, obviously migration results in brain drain. Our intelligent people are going abroad and leaving India, without development. Remittances are good, but they're not always used for beneficial purposes. For example, India faced problems due to foreign funding for extremist movements like the Khalistan, Kashmir terrorism, etc. The NRIs are not allowed to set up firms directly in India due to, red tapeism and other things. And India, that is the reason why we are not able to take advantage of their entrepreneurial skills. Then e-migrate system and minimum referral wages policy has been detrimental to some extent in India because companies now find it easier to hire cheap labor from countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan. And of course, poor schemes coupled with ineffectual implementation at the grassroots level hinder the diaspora contribution towards the growth of India. Now looking towards the future, we need to formalize a rotation program wherein the top NRI scientists, engineers, doctors, managers, professionals serve Indian public sector organizations for a brief period, lending their expertise. India should also aggressively quote NRIs to invest in India, especially for rural development projects, giving them some attractive interest rates on deposits. India also can open a separate ministry, Minister of State level department for NRI administration, because our Indian diaspora is huge and we need to address their issues. Social media has made it easy and inexpensive for Indian diaspora to stay in touch with family and friends back home, and their link to India has now become stronger. So it is time for the Indian government to leverage the strong bond for the greater good of the nation. So these are some of the works cited. Once again, I thank ELTAI and all the office bearers of ELTAI for giving me this opportunity. And I also thank Praveen sir and Vinod sir for organizing this webinar successfully today. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Usha, for your elaborative and illustrative presentation on diaspora, Indian diaspora, literary and cultural representations of the Desi. Professor Usha, you have wonderfully explained the diasporic practices of the Indian communities in vivid fields such as literature, cultural studies, and film studies. She has also highlighted new tendencies in the configuration of the global Indian diaspora. The lecture rendered a great analysis of the Indian diaspora's historical and contemporary connotations, its theoretical framework, the cultural hybridizations that emerge from diaspora, and other topics, touching on the cultural and social effects of the spread of Indian peoples around the globe. She has wonderfully explained different Indian diaspora who promoted themselves, their services, their skills and expertise, and tried to achieve in different fields, at the same time brought great growth and progression to their native country, India. And they have, Madam has illustratively explained how Indian diaspora became torchbearers and contributed to the growth of India and its culture by facilitating investment, accelerating industrial development, and boosting international trade and tourism. And she has also shared about various literary works written by our Indian diaspora and how they have shown the cultural diversity in their works, as they have already experienced both their native culture in India as well as the foreign culture and the problems that they have faced. even though they have faced different kinds of problems and issues, they tried to go ahead to get success in their lives so that they became torchbearers to the Indian community. And Madam has illustratively explained about the challenges faced by Indian diaspora. Like some Indian diaspora faced the issues of racism, communalism by nationalist and nationalist government, anti-globalization, sectarian laws, and adverse local laws. And at the same time, we too are facing some issues in India. Because of this diaspora, we are losing the great intelligent minds. So brain drain has become a common thing which makes our country lose a lot. And the Indian diaspora, we are unable to use their expertise because of some issues in our country, like red tapeism, which we are unable to make use of their entrepreneurship, Indian diaspora's entrepreneurship. Moreover, e-migration system has become very simple nowadays, which is causing to get employees or laborers from other countries rather than India. Hence, she has marvelously suggested to us that India should make use of Indian diaspora for the development of India. Of course, India is getting good economic growth because of Indian diaspora, but at the same time, India requires the intelligence and expertise of our Indian diaspora. So by involving them, by providing them various opportunities in various professions like as scientists or engineers or in various technical issues, if we can involve them at least up to some extent, wherever it is possible, then we can utilize, we can make use of their expertise. And at the same time, by giving some opportunities to them to arrange some firms, startups, they can certainly be helpful to the Indian youth. And at the same time, we can utilize social media tools also. And the governments also should provide some opportunities to them to enter politics so that they can be helpful to make our India a golden India. So Madam has wonderfully explained all these things with different statistical measures also, which has portrayed us a wonderful picture about the great strength of Indian diaspora. So friends, this scholarly lecture has enlightened our minds about glimpses of diaspora literature and its literary and cultural representations of the Desi. It's a very thought-provoking to the explorative research minds, Ma'am. So now, Professor Ma'am, thank you so much for the wonderful session. And now I take the session ahead. I declare the session open for question and answers. I request the participants to post their queries in chat box so that we can discuss them.
Ma'am, the questions are on the WhatsApp chat.
Yes. So, ma'am, here is a question. Mr. Musamala Vamsi Krishna. Is there an obvious link between diaspora and development? Ma'am, here is a question from Musamala Vamsi Krishna.
Yeah.
The question is...
I got it, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am. Please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dear audience, dear Mr. Vamsi Krishna, diaspora is interdisciplinary. I'm sure you would have understood that. It is not something pertaining only to literature. When we talk of Indian diaspora, we talk of politics, sociology, economics, commerce, human relations, and socio-economic development of India in general. So, there is a very big link between diaspora and development. Indian diaspora has contributed to the development of India a lot. And India is one of the top countries to receive remittances from the diaspora. So obviously, even though some of it is being wasted, but still, India has really developed because of IT, because of the remittances and because of the knowledge being shared by these Indian diasporic people across the world to India. So that kind of relation has really helped India to develop. And that is what I've spoken of, the soft power. That is very important because very recently, if you have seen the Trump administration in US and the Joe Biden's administration, the visa rules and the rules for our Indian diaspora have definitely relaxed. I'm sure because of the influence of Kamala Harris. So definitely Indian diaspora have worked for the development. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Here is one more question, ma'am, by Professor Mohanraj Sathuvalli. From the framework you have created, where do we place others like Rajarao and A.K. Ramanujan? They don't fit into some of the categories you have so exhaustively listed.
Raja, sir, good evening, sir. Rajarao and even A.K. Ramanujan, they speak about Indian philosophy, homeland, nostalgia for, India, and they talk of dislocation, quest for identity. These are some of the themes which are related to Indian diaspora. So the early Indian writers spoke of these issues, going away from the homeland, nostalgia for, India and such issues. Whereas the recent diasporic writers, they speak of transnationalism, they speak of social issues, they speak of alternative homes, not just having one home that is India, but Chitra Banerjee, she speaks of growing roots everywhere, wherever you go. So there is definitely a difference in perspective, but that shows that Indian diaspora are also trying to have linkages in the country where they have gone, and they are trying to develop transnational identities.
Thank you, ma'am. And now another question from Dr. Vinod K. Chopra. Partition diaspora should have been included in the diaspora studies. Take the example of Sindhi diaspora that emerged phoenix like out of the ashes of the partition holocaust. Are stories by them worth mentioning?
Definitely. Partition is one of the important themes in diaspora. If you see some of the India-Pakistan, partition stories, even today we have a number of writings coming up from not just the first generation, the second generation writers who speak of the oral histories and the archival records of Indian partition and how it has created a strong sense of displacement among the Indians, both in India and Pakistan. So that is very important idea, not just among the Hindus and the Muslims, but also the Sindhis, Parsis, and other communities, who have faced this kind of a problem.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Noyin Kalik is asking, please share a list of effective and impressive diaspora in the field of English language teaching in foreign universities.
List
of effective and impressive diaspora in the field of English language teaching in foreign universities.
Okay. Do you mean to say, Dr. Kalik, about the Indian professors who have settled in foreign universities? That I don't have, but maybe I should also think about this aspect of it.
Okay, ma'am. And now Mr. Saji Rao, he's asking, ma'am, are Mahatma Gandhi, Dr. Ambedkar, Pandit Nehru diasporic writers? Diasporic writers?
They're not diasporic writers because they have, for example, Mahatma Gandhi has gone to UK, he studied there, later he went to South Africa, and then he came back to India, right? So how can we classify him as diasporic? Maybe the writings which he has written during his stay in South Africa, maybe they're called as diasporic writings. But the three people you have mentioned, the three famous personalities, they have gone abroad for studies or for employment and they have come back. Okay, so I don't think they can be called as diasporic writers. They are Indians.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And one more question, ma'am, from Dr. Lal Singh. Do you agree that concept of a nation becomes subservient to the global prophecy created and established by thumbing success of Indian diaspora and similar diaspora from other countries?
The concept of nation differs for each one of us. You know, our perspective, our way of looking at the nation differs. For example, the writers of the past and the writers of the present, okay, the old diaspora and the new diaspora, they, when you look at their texts, their narratives, the concept of the nation differs for them. Okay, so we can't categorize everyone under the same, saying that this is the nation. We don't have a homogenized, pure concept of home or India. Each one of the writers take India in a different perspective. So you have to go to the individual writer to understand the concept of home or the concept of nation. Of course, on one hand, we see the success of Indian diaspora, but also among the challenges I've mentioned, that there are also the other migrants who have gone to different countries of the world and who have faced hardships, who are still facing hardships. Look at some of the Indians who have gone and who have been imprisoned in different countries and who are still in the jail and who are not able to come back, you know, outside the prison or even to their own homeland. So these are also some of the challenges we have, where India has to use the soft power and diplomacy to bring them out. Very recently, we have seen the case of Indian army officer, going to Pakistan and being fought by the Pakistan army, and later, he was jailed. There was a very big, problem, and finally he was returned to India. So in that way, there are also tough times for the Indians. Very recently, and right now in contemporary times, we have seen Afghanistan, where India has been a good friend of Afghanistan. India has built a parliament and important offices in Kabul. But the problem is Indians, when in the recent crisis, Indians had to suddenly pack up and come back home. So like that, the Indian diaspora doesn't have a rosy picture wherever they go. They also have many issues and challenges. They face communal attacks. All these things are happening. So we can't just say there is one concept of nation. No. Each writer speaks from his or her perspective. and they create that kind of a space for themselves through their writings.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. And one more question, ma'am, from Mr. Satishan. How has diaspora influenced ethnic dynamics? What is the scope of ethnic studies and research through diaspora?
This is a very important question because ethnicity is one of the important markers of diaspora. Ethnic studies, religious studies in diaspora, religious diaspora, all these. And when we talk of culture, Indian culture, diaspora is interdisciplinary. So these things can be definitely closely researched and they can be really talked of, from that perspective, definitely.
Okay, and here is another question from Dr. Sheikh M.A. Rahman. Is Indian diaspora the result of the pessimistic attitude?
What do you mean by result of pessimistic attitude? Whose attitude is that?
I think this is the attitude of the writers who write those words. Maybe it's my intention.
I don't think so. Not all writers are pessimistic. they speak positively. Of course, pessimism differs, based on your perspective. Sometimes when they talk of loss, displacement, and all that, it depends. Like some of the diaspora are, they had forced migration, indenture labor, forced migration, all that. So they may have some sad story to tell us. Whereas of late, we have seen that there is a very positive migration. Worked professionals are going abroad and they do not feel as if they are migrating to a different place. We are seeing how Indian students and Indian professionals are going to not just one country, but different countries in the course of their career, working in different countries and gaining a lot of experience. Very recently, one of my cousins, he's doing MBA in US, and so he told me that he has visited 2 countries every semester to gain real-time experience, which is part of their MBA program. So in 2 years, he has traveled to 8 countries. So it is, because of the ease of travel, ease of living, and because of the media and mobility, it has become very easy for Indians to travel abroad. Of course, people have different perspectives and there might be some pessimistic ideas, but usually, today it is not forced migration. People are going to different places for better opportunities.
Thank you, ma'am. One more last question. Mr. Rajnikant Babubhai Chauhan is asking, how much existentialism is concerned with diaspora?
Existentialism is one of the important aspects of diaspora. We find this aspect in Jhumpa Lahari, and some of the recent writers who have spoken of the existential ideas in the place of their stay. So it's also definitely one of the important themes in diaspora.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for the lovely and educating interaction. Dear participants, I hope that Dr. Usha ma'am responded to all your queries up to your satisfaction. And thanks a lot, ma'am, for answering the attendees' questions and for the great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us. And now, I should move on. Vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Sridevi, for handling the session so smoothly.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. It's my honor to extend vote of thanks on the 66th session of the ELTAI webinar series organized by Vijayawada chapter. I feel immense pleasure to thank Professor N. Usha, Department of English, Krishna University, Machilipatnam, for her graceful, elaborative talk on shaping Indian diaspora, literary and cultural representation of the Desi, which is very thought-provoking lecture. All of us have inspired with her deliberation. Thank you, ma'am. I deem it privilege to thank the ELTAI Central Committee, means the office bearers of ELTAI, and also Vijayawada chapter, for giving this wonderful opportunity by creating a platform to exchange and enhance knowledge, and also for their continuous guidance and support. Thank you for giving this opportunity to host this webinar. I thank the moderator, Mrs. Vishnu Vandana Devi, Associate Professor, Vijaya College of Engineering and Technology, Vijayawada, for graciously introducing the guest speaker and the topic. It's a pleasure to be with you, ma'am. I thank our host, Dr. Praveen Sam, Assistant Professor, SSN College of Engineering, Chennai, for his technical support and helping us, guiding us in running that seminar very smoothly. My deep sense of appreciation and thanks to all the participants who attended the webinar with enthusiasm and made it a successful event. We can see a lot of comments in the chat box, and thank you for your involvement during the session. Once again, I thank you so much, one and all, on the platform to be with us and making this webinar a very successful event. Thank you so much.